beginning of my video. Boom!
Welcome back to Boring Reviews.
Boring land.
Oh, just
on.
kidding.
Blasphemer!
All
Hello,
right.
Boring Review Nation!
Kind of pointless.
We know all things. It was over in a snap.
We really want it. Alright, we'll be nice.
Only you can be a Patreon.
Oh my gosh!
That's crazy.
You don't need to follow the show to be hyped.
Hello, Boring Review Nation! Gabe!
Nick.
And we're here today for another Throwback Thursday.
It took me a second.
Oh man, dude, I'm telling you, I think that this is gonna happen, and we're gonna see more of this because you got to figure production has been shut down in Hollywood now for what, at least 6 months, close to 6 months. So Netflix is bringing back all these old school films, and even Amazon, all these old school films.
Dude, not just that, but CBS. I have CBS All Access, so I don't ask me why. But they advertise their Sunday movie of the week, and they're bringing back these old movies. Hold on 1 second. Keep recording. I forgot about one thing real quick for our video. It's going to be perfect. Hold on. What was I thinking, man? I actually have the shirt, and I'm not going to wear it. Come on. So
Let's just start
this is
over.
the movie that we're looking at today, Raiders of the Lost Ark, for our Throwback Thursday. If you're new to this style of video, and almost all of you are because we had so many views in our last one, we are looking at these Hollywood classics. It won't be just Hollywood, it'll be some Bollywood classics too. But we're going to start with some Hollywood classics, some movies that we grew up on, that we love for these Throwback Thursdays. We did Back to the Future last week. We're looking at Raiders of the Lost Ark today. Doesn't mean we won't go to the sequels for Back to the Future, but we just got a whole bunch of movies on our slate first we want to get to. Raiders of the Lost Ark. All right, so this was directed by Steven Spielberg, produced, written by George Lucas. George Lucas had this story idea, and he brought it to Steven Spielberg, and they made it happen. There's a whole lot of information about how they first cast Magnum PI's Tom Selleck for the role. They thought he was perfect for it. He had contractual obligations, much like Michael J. Fox had with Back to the Future, and so he had to turn it down because he was doing Magnum PI. They kept going back to Harrison Ford, and George Lucas said, no, he was just Han Solo. We can't use this guy every time or whatever. They eventually came back to him, and you can't imagine anyone else but my boy right here in this role. This movie is the first in a trilogy, or actually there's 4 of them now, but we don't count that 4th one. The first in a trilogy of great films that are all fantastic about the archaeologist, part-time professor that is obsessed with getting these antiquities and trying to bring them to the museum. And this one is all about the Lost Ark. If you're a religious, a Christian whatsoever, and if you read the Old Testament, the Lost Ark is the actual remnants of the 10 Commandments that Moses brought down from the mountain. And the Israelites would take this Lost Ark, they would take this Ark of the Covenant, and they would use it in battles. And this ark would protect them. They'd have the power of God with them, and that they were basically invincible. And eventually they just held it in their temple at all times. And so there's a little bit of background right there. Let's jump into this. I don't know about you, Gabe, but this is a movie I used to watch all the time as a kid, and I still watch it.
You know what? It's so funny because depending, I would say not even what year you were born because it was so close together. But there are certain people that see Harrison Ford as Han Solo, and there's some people that see him as Indiana Jones. And there, you know what I mean? Very few people can break that bridge between one or the other. So I could see why George Lucas didn't want to use him for both because he kind of divided that fan base. But to me, Harrison Ford will always be Han Solo, okay? I love him as Indy, but he'll always be Han Solo. I'm a bigger Star Wars fan. But I loved this movie growing up, and I always, dude, tell me that you didn't walk around with a belt in your house after watching this, trying to act like it was a whip, just, and accidentally whip your little brother. They go crying, and then you get
I can't tell you how badly I wanted his hat. And when you go to Disneyland and they have the fake hats over there, every time I put it on, I'm like, no, I look stupid with it on. Only Indiana Jones can rock that hat. But I mean, he had the hat. The dude's got the button-up shirt, the whip. I definitely dressed up as Indiana Jones plenty of times.
So this movie basically starts off with him on an archaeological. He's somewhere. I want to say it was like in It wasn't Mexico. I know that there was like native Aztecs there or something to that effect. But he starts off there and he gets the idol he's looking for. Okay. He's with the guy who's his companion, but the guy tries to double cross him. The guy ends up dying in a trap because he doesn't know how to look out for these things like the experienced Indiana Jones does, right? So Indiana Jones makes it out, and then once he finally gets out, his arch nemesis of the movie, Balak,
Balak. No, oh my gosh, how am I going to draw a blank? He says it wrong in the movie. Bullock.
right, Bullock is waiting for him. He's surrounded by all these natives.
Sorry, Belloc.
Belloc, right? He's surrounded by all these natives, and he just let Indy do all the work for him. Right? This is French guy. He's super suave. He's also an explorer, so he's like, thanks. And he takes the idol from him, and Indy is like, too bad these people don't know you like I know you. And he's like, yeah, it'd be nice if you could tell him, but you don't speak the language. So he one-ups Indy there a little bit. So Indiana Jones ends up getting away as he normally does.
I love that.
All these people chasing him, and it's funny because his pilot's fishing or whatever, and he's like, start the plane. They jump on the plane, they get out of there.
He's got a big one too. He's like, I want to get this fish.
He gets on the plane, they get back home to, I think they're in England, right? No, they're Americans. They're in America. They're America.
Yeah.
So he gets back, and then you realize he's a professor. This guy you just saw escape all these booby traps. That's where the big boulder comes from. Even if you haven't seen Indiana Jones, you've seen that famous clip, and it's been used in so many other movies where the big boulder is going behind you in the big temple while you're running around the booby traps. You saw this guy that was a super action star with the whip and everything, and he's a professor in a classroom. So I was like, oh, you know what I mean? Like, I always thought, hey, man, I'm kind of like Indiana Jones. I'm a teacher, you know what I mean?
Stop it, Ross.
I'm not like Indiana Jones. But,
I never realized this before, but first of all, it was in Peru where he got the idol.
Peru.
But I never realized, but he worked at Marshall College. I assume they would have given like a fictional college, but actually a Marshall College, so that's kind of cool. But yeah, I mean, he's this guy, and he teaches part-time. He's got these college students who are in love with him. She's like closing her eyes. I love you. This movie goes in so many different directions, but let's keep it down to 10 minutes. So if you have watched this review, you have seen this movie. This movie is so awesome in so many levels. And it starts with Harrison Ford. You said you see him as Han Solo. I see him a little more as Indiana Jones, to tell you the truth, because he is perfect for this role. He's got that gritty nature. He's got that grumpy nature. I mean, I think of all of his characters, I feel like Harrison Ford is probably closest to Indiana Jones, just in his persona and his personality. This guy, not only is he an action star, but he's also very intellectual, this character. This guy is awesome. He knows all this kind of information. There's so many parts of this movie that I love. When I was a kid, we had this bunk bed in my room, and it was a larger bunk bed, wood and all that kind of stuff, and it had the ladder on the side. It had the underneath part. I cannot tell you how many times I have watched the truck scene, the action sequence, and I have reenacted it on that bunk bed. When we're talking about, later down the movie, he has chased down these Nazis, right? And Belloc, and inside this truck is the Ark of the Covenant that they had stole from him after he found it. And it's one of the greatest action sequences, in my opinion, in any action movie whatsoever, where he's on that truck, he's climbing on top, he's climbing the side, he gets knocked over, he holds on by the rope. I reenacted that so many times because it's such a great scene. And I always get goosebumps. I always get pumped up at the beginning of that scene where they say, Indy, it's on a truck. And he says, truck? What truck? And then he goes after it with his horse. I love this movie so much. That is my favorite scene. There's so many other great scenes. His fear of snakes is awesome. He's in the plane at the very beginning, and he says, there's a plane in the plane, Jacques. There's a plane, or there's a snake in the plane. And he's like, oh, that's just my pet snake, Reggie. And he's like, I hate snakes, Jacques. I hate them. And he's in the tomb with all the snakes, and you got the cobra looking at him. This movie is so awesome. You have the fight scene with the giant bald guy who gets his head taken off with the propellers and everything.
Right.
There's so many awesome parts in this movie, but there's a theory from the show Big Bang Theory, I'm not sure you've heard this before, where Indiana Jones does nothing to affect the outcome of the movie. The Nazis still get the Ark at the end. they still open it up, and they're the end of their own demise. It's
Right.
power of God that stops them, not Indiana Jones. But man, it's so fun to see him try. My second favorite scene, and then I'll shut up, is where he's hiding on the boat. And he's with the captain of the boat and the people, and the Nazis are trying to find him. They get Marion, they take her over. And so he goes in the ocean and he jumps on the submarine and gets inside. There's this part where the captain and his first mate, they're looking for him because he was hiding when the Nazis were there and they were gone. They're like, have you found him? No, I haven't found him. Look again. We have to find him. We got to protect this guy. And then he says, I found him. Where? There. And then the music goes on and he's climbing up and he's dancing around. I love that scene. I rewound that a million times too. But again, someone in nowadays, modern times says, I think it was an Honest Trailer or something, they said, we still don't know how he got inside the submarine because the whole thing's going down and he's on top. But I love this movie.
Right. No, definitely. And is there a whole bunch of plot holes in it that you could blow up? Absolutely. But it's just again, you got to realize when this was filmed. What was this? 1981, I believe. So it's a long time ago. That I agree with you. That action scene on the truck is awesome. A lot of practical effects there. My favorite scene though has got to be when he's I forget where he is. He's in the Middle East somewhere, and he's fighting all these like Arab guys or whatever, and this big huge dude takes out the knife and he's like choo 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 choo. He's turning around, he just pulls out his gun, boom, shoots him, puts his gun back or whatever. Like, you know what I mean? That was such a cool scene there.
And I was the story behind that scene, right? I mean, it's been told a million times. There was supposed to be this big old action sequence planned out and choreographed, but he had some bad food when he was there on location. He was sick to his stomach. He didn't want to do the part. And so he just, instead of doing the whole action sequence, he just gets out his gun and shoots him. And they loved it so much that they improv'd it, that they left it in the movie. That makes it even more classic and more legendary that he was just Harrison Ford being like, no, I'm not doing this right now. Boom.
It's the classic scene, you know what I mean? But I ultimately, like you said, and I didn't realize the Big Bang Theory had that theory. You know, the Nazis actually prevail because he finds the idol, he finds the Ark of the Covenant because he is a great explorer and he is a great archaeologist. But once again, Belloc outsmarts him. He takes it from him or whatnot. So he doesn't really affect it. And once the Nazis open up the Ark of the Covenant, okay, they all melt. That's where, you know, that horror their face starts melting off. You can't look into the Ark of the Covenant. You know what I mean? You're not worthy. And their entire army gets taken out. And, you know, for me, I tell you what, I have a soft spot in my heart for this film. I love it. Again, these Throwback Thursdays is so hard. If we're going to put it on a Throwback Thursday, then you know it's going to get a good grade. It's not a perfect film, but you got to look past that and the plot holes because, again, this was 1981. I give this movie a solid A. How about you, Nick?
A solid A. How dare
solid
you?
Solid A.
Plus, easily. This film is so entertaining. The music is so awesome. I have shown this to my kids when they were much younger, even with the face melting, because it's just such a great movie. I cannot say that even when they were super young, they were super engaged, but they loved it. The music, I mean, that score is legendary. I had that theme song as my alarm for many, many years. And it starts off with da-da-da, da-da-da, da-da-da. I mean, it's just so awesome. And then it goes into the whole crescendo and everything. This movie, I can't say enough about. You got awesome villains. You got the awesome friends like Sala. You got the whole dates, and he catches the date when Indiana Jones tries to eat the poison without knowing it, and he says, bad date. I mean, me and my family have quoted this movie so many times growing up. You can watch it time and time again. As far as a trilogy goes, each movie has its own different tone. This one is more of a serious, kind of a gritty tone than the other two, and I like it. So my favorite, I was in the supermarket the other day, and I thought about this line. I don't even know why. I wasn't even thinking about this review, but I love so many parts about this movie. I had this line in my head, and I thought, I want to go watch this movie again, where, you know, he gets the assignment from those guys to go get the Ark of the Covenant, and, you know, his friend, what's his name? The guy who got lost in his own museum. Anyways, he, the guy at the school, he tells him, like, are you sure you want to do this? It could be dangerous. And he pulls out his gun and he's like, you know what kind of a cautious fellow I am. And he throws that in the trunk. This is 1981 when this movie came out. This is before the 80 action movies came out. This is when one guy with one gun and 6 bullets was more than enough for him to handle himself because he had the whip as well. This movie is not over the top. This movie, in my opinion, totally holds up. It's just such a great movie. You have so many quotable lines in the beginning sequence where he says, "Stay out of the light," and all this kind of stuff. I absolutely love it. I want to watch it again. I love the submarine scene. I love the music, and not just that, but you have a great love story too, where you have Marion and you have Indiana Jones, and they had a fling when she was younger, and he was not as young, but he was younger than he is now, and he felt bad about that. But you can tell he still loves her. He's a complete awesome player when it comes to the whole scene where he's talking about what parts hurt, and she kisses it, and he starts getting wise to it. He says, "Oh, this part's not too bad," and then he gets that whole thing lured in. I love it. Even the scene with the mirror where he's looking at it, and her side is dirty, so she flips it over, hits him in the face, and he starts screaming, "Ah!" And then she asks him, "Did you say something?" Like, she has no idea she heard him. I mean, he's just so great in this movie. He's not invincible. He definitely goes through a ringer, and he's so smart, and it's just great. So A+ all the way. I'm ashamed by you and your A. How dare you?
You know what it is? And I think I mentioned this earlier. For whatever reason, I'm looking at these films and I want to see if they hold up till today. I know they're throwbacks, so they're not gonna, but I want to see if they hold up to today. And yes, the story writing holds up to today. The cinematography is amazing. I love some of the shots, and especially when they're inside the temple and when he's unearthing the Ark of the Covenant. So many cool scenes and so many cool shots. The snakes, I was looking to see if they were rubbery, but no, those look like real snakes, man. If they were, they couldn't pay me enough to do that scene. But with that being said, some of the fights, it's the sound effects that kill me, though. It sounds like, a bucket fell when somebody gets hit with that old sound effect. For whatever reason, that's like the only nitpick I have when the fight scenes. They over amplify those hits so much. Like, really? Come on.
How dare you? So there's our Throwback Thursday for Indiana Jones, Raiders of the Lost Ark. There's so many iconic parts about this movie. Let us know what are your favorite sequences. If we didn't mention it yet, let us know which of the three is your favorite in the series. This one, I mean, for me, I like them all very, very much. I would say it goes back and forth between this one and the third one as far as my favorite one. But let us know. Don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe. Don't forget to share this with your friends. Don't forget to get these Throwback Thursdays, something that is a regular thing that we want to keep coming back to and people watching. And until next time.
We know all things.